Welcome to another edition of the Buttercom Telecom Files. This time I would like to discuss with you a little bit around the latest development in the national broadband network rollout in Australia, and in particular in relation to Telstra. What we've seen, of course, in the past couple of years is a rather dramatic change. Back in 2005, 6, 7 we had Sol Trujillo, the previous CEO, who was adamant to try and maintain a monopoly, and that led to very ugly situations in the country, suing ministers and calling names and all that sort of stuff. We had a very, very terrible time. Based on that sort of situation, the government started to draft some new legislation that would start stopping it. They were absolutely sick and tired of that sort of behavior for Telstra, and they came up with very, very tough regulations. In principle, basically the structural separation of Telstra. Now that caused shock effects in Telstra, and Mr. Trujillo was sent home to the United States, and a new CEO was appointed, David Sodi, who is far more considerate and who has a much better relationship with the government and is actually supporting the government's national broadband network. It understands what the government wants to do, it wants to move forward, and it also accepts that the future national broadband network, the fibre network, is a structurally separated setup. So we see major changes happening in Telstra's situation. Now, taking that further, then obviously we see that there are some problems in relation to the negotiation, how to get from where we are now to the new situation in when the fibre optic network will be deployed. That's a real sort of problem area, because the government actually wants structural separation from now on. Yeah, also the existing copper network, and that obviously would have far-reaching consequences for Telstra. On the other side, the government is trying to negotiate with Telstra how actually they can participate in the national broadband rollout and how that fit together. So there's quite a complex situation. On one side, how is Telstra's future going to look like, and on the other side, what's happening in the interim period. Now, both actually are at this very moment in an impasse. They're still talking, there are still constructive talks between the two groups, but at the same time it's a very difficult situation. On looking into the future, the major problem for Telstra is the value of the assets that it wants to put perhaps in the national broadband network. And obviously, if you talk about an old aging copper network, then that is not as much as it might appear in the books at Telstra, and the government is not prepared to pay the premium price for a copper-based network based on that sort of calculations. That of course is then not very palatable for the shareholders, and Telstra of course has a great problem in that sort of situation. I honestly believe that Telstra should really look at the future and see at what's the benefits of moving forwards into the national broadband network. Without or with the national broadband network, without or without structural separation, it is facing dramatic problems with its traditional business. We saw a 7% downturn in the last financial figures in relation to the traditional business. So this is a fantastic opportunity for Telstra to jump the S-curve and actually start building a new business based on the national broadband network. And there must be value in it for them as well. Unfortunately, there has been some problems in educating the shareholders and taking the shareholders forwards into the national broadband network as well. I think that's where the major problem lies. The shareholders doesn't really understand the benefits of Telstra becoming involved in the national broadband network, and the opportunities, the business opportunities they have, the revenue opportunities they have going forward. And I would think that negotiating a deal that takes that into account is far more important than the few $billions more or less that you get for the copper-based network. So the future, in my opinion, should be based on what's in it for Telstra in the national broadband network, how it can make more money in the future, and then actually try finding a transition situation. My understanding is that the government, there is some room for maneuvering with the government in that transition period. With the new Telstra management, there is definitely some room to look at the very stringent sort of regulations that the government put on the table. But at the other side, obviously, it all depends on how Telstra is going to participate in in the longer term a national broadband network. So this story will actually be continued. There is no solution yet. Everybody still talks about trying to get a win-win situation, so let's hope with that positive sort of attitude that things will turn out for the better for everybody, you know, for Telstra, for the government, and for all of us in Australia who want a top-class broadband network, and you know, who would like to see Telstra being a major player in that area as well. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. More information at the end of this clip, and talk to you next time. Thank you.